Hey folks, this is Johnny and welcome to part 2 of the Faderport 8 series, where we are now going to focus on certain sections of the Faderport and see all of the in-depth options that are available. Alright, so in this video we're going to focus on the transport section and the navigation area. And the navigation area is very deep. It has F options as well as actual command options for the buttons. So let's start going through that with the transport. And the transport has a very cool feature for Studio One. It actually has a pause button. In this case, I have my return to start on stop option activated. So if you go to, I'm on a Mac this time, and I'm going to go into options and I'm going to say return to start on stop. So what that enables us to do, for those that don't know, is when you hit play, and you hit stop, whenever you hit stop, it returns to the last point that you stopped at. So if I was to scroll to here, hit play, and then hit stop, it returns to that point that I scrolled to. Hope that makes sense to everybody. By turning that off, basically the stop button acts like a pause button and you have to manually rewind. However, now you can do both. You can actually pause and return to the last point that you stopped at with the Faderport 8 because Studio One now has a true pause button. So I'm going to hit play. And I'm going to hit pause. And you see it did not go back to where I started. I'm going to hit play again. Hit pause. There you go. You see it's stuck right where it stopped, as if the return to start on stop was off. Cool thing is, if I go ahead and hit play, and now if I use the stop button, the return to start on stop works as normal. So it's very, very cool now to be able to kind of switch between those two. But just remember that using the pause and then the stop, it will return to the point at which you last paused. I would love to see it remember a couple of stops ago, but I think that this makes a lot more sense if you're doing a lot of heavy editing where you can actually stop, pause, keep playing, and then go back to the pause part again. Maybe someday they'll come up with an option to actually toggle between those two. But right now, for me and the way I edit, this is beautiful, being able to start, pause, continue, and then stop and have it go back to the last pause point. Very, very cool. All right, so that is the stop, pause, and play buttons. Next is the loop activate button. And of course, it's very, very simple. Down here in Studio One, we've got this right here, and that pretty much does that. Nothing out of the ordinary there for that, so that's cool. All right, so now let's go to the fast forward and rewind buttons. These two buttons are very, very cool because not only do you have fast forward, rewind, and you can fast forward and rewind while playing, and it drops you right into the spot. That's kind of cool to have, but you now have this ability. You could double tap the stop button, but if you're already on these buttons, just hit both of these together, boom, and you return to start. Very, very cool function. So now we'll just go on to the record button. Again, nothing very exciting here, just like the loop button, but it does just that. You can go ahead and move to a point. I don't have any tracks armed, so all you'll see is the red record button activate, but it should still be a good example. I can literally just start recording from here and then punch out. Or, as I have the foot pedal hooked up. If I hit the foot pedal, boom, now play is, record is engaged and then disengaged. But this is nice. You can just use this as a punch button. I can start playing in 3, 2, 1, punch. Punch out. They're just like that. So, again, nothing totally out of the ordinary here for these two buttons, but those function really, really well. It's very, very cool to be able to actually punch on the fly. If you're recording somebody else and you don't have a pedal, you can actually manually punch them in right there, or you can set up auto punch, and that's in a different video. All right, so that is the transport area. Nice addition having the pause option and the return to zero option here if you don't feel like double clicking the stop button like that. So either way, it's all preference. I prefer this. It's just real simple. All right, so now let's go through my favorite part of this part of the air. Now let's go through my favorite part of the Faderport, which is this navigation area right here. We have a single knob. It's clickable. And we also have a left and a right arrow for banking through the different tracks. So let's start with the banking. So when you're in bank mode, you have a couple of things that you can do here. You use the arrows to bank through all of your tracks in groups of 8, which is very cool. And let's see, let's go to scroll, and we know what scroll does. Awesome. Lets you scroll through your song. And then we have zoom. If you click zoom, you have a couple of really nice options here. You can actually use the knob to zoom horizontally, or use the arrows to zoom vertically, or to zoom vertically, which is what I almost said. So it's very, very nice to be able to use. If you just use this, I'm going to switch to scroll. I'm going to scroll to a certain part right here. And now I'm going to use my zoom to actually zoom in tight on the area where the cursor is sitting. So you can really get in there nice and tight. You can open this up a little bit. There we go. See? I didn't even have to touch the mouse, which is sitting right here. So that's very, very cool to be able to do that. And of course, you can actually use channel mode to actually get through your channels. So if you decided you didn't want to touch the mouse, I want to show you how zoom and channel can work really well. Let's go ahead. I'm going to channel all the way to the beginning, to the top track, which is my kick drum track, and it's red. And I want to focus on this track. So I am actually going to go back to zoom, and I'm going to make it larger that way, and then I'm going to hit this way and actually do that. Then I'm going to go to scroll, and I'm going to scroll through to the part that I want. And then I am going to use the arrows to go through the tracks. That's an option that's also available in scroll, or I can go back to channel and do the same thing. So you can really, just with these sets of buttons for your editing, it's very, very cool. Scroll, zoom, and channel really lets you go through things one at a time and lets you not have to touch the mouse. You can do everything with just these buttons here. So that was important for me to show you how these buttons can actually help you with your editing. So now let's say I want to go back to the first channel. I've got it in channel mode. So then I'm back up to the kick track. I want to go to zoom, and I want to actually make this a little bit more narrow. And then I actually want to zoom a little bit less out. Then I go back to scroll, and I go here. Now let's say I want to edit this blue blob here on the snare track. So I'm going to go to channel. I'm going to switch to the snare track. Then I'm going to go back to zoom, and then I'm going to zoom in this way. And then I'm going to zoom in this way. So now I'm editing the part right here that I want, right where the cursor is, right there. So it's very, very nice to be able to get your hands off that mouse and to really start to use buttons and knobs to get through things. So remember, this is banking. This is scrolling for scrolling through your songs. This is zoom for zooming in and out. And this is channel to select your channel. And like I said, in scroll mode, you've got this way, but you can also, it gives you the ability to go through your tracks with the arrows. So pick your combination of how you want to use these top row of buttons. And it can be super, super creative. And of course, if you're going to use the bank, let's say we bank, where do we want to bank? We want to bank all the way to the end. And now you see that, we're not even on any. I'm going to select this channel here, the last channel. Boom, Studio One updates to the last channel that I selected. So you don't even have to click the mouse to the channel that you select on the Faderport, because Studio One is smart enough to know, oh, that's where the Faderport wants to go. Let me change the view to that point. So it's very, very cool to be able to just use these top row of 4 buttons, the 2 arrows, and the wheel to actually get through that. So let's move on to the bottom row of buttons. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reset everything. So let's see if I can reset everything here. I'm going to go back to my kick track, and I'm going to go to the zoom, and I'm going to get the song back into the area, and then I'm going to go to here so I can fit my whole area right here. And I'm going to show you another button real quick. If you look up here, you got F1, F2, F3, F4. You can actually go ahead and, let's say I wanted to close the mixer. I don't want to go to the mouse, and I don't want to do it that way. I can just go like this. I hit Shift, I hit F3, and the mixer's gone. Isn't that cool? I mean, I did this all from the Faderport. I didn't have to navigate anywhere else. I can choose to close the browser. I can choose to close the inspector, and then I can go back to zoom, and then I can. Oops! I opened edit. See, I forgot to turn off the shift. So let's turn off the shift, and let's go to zoom. And let's go to shift. Let's open up the mixer. Close the mixer. There we go. Turn off shift, and then go to zoom. And there we go. Now I can get everything back to where I wanted it. So you saw I got a little bit held up there. I haven't used the Faderport as much as I'd like, but I am really starting to get a rhythm down on using all of these buttons for what I want to do. All right, so that's that. Let's continue on with these buttons. The master button I kind of showed you earlier. We're going to hit the master button, and actually before I do that, I'm going to hit shift, and I'm going to open up the mixer again, F3, and I'm going to go turn off the shift, and I'm going to go to the master button. And so now if you watch over here, our master control, we now have control over the master with just this beautiful shuttle wheel. Yes, it's a clicky one. It's not a smooth one. But when you start to use it with the grid, you're going to actually come to appreciate the fact that it clicks, because you can click on the bar. You can click per bar, which is really nice to be able to get to things and know that when you actually use the scroll wheel to get to a position in the song, it's going to snap exactly on the beat. For those of us that work with grids, it's beautiful. All right, so let's go to the next thing, click. Again, it's about as eventful as the record button and the loop button, but it does its job. It turns the click on and off, and you can actually see that from down here. I'm going to hit the click button. Here we go. It's clicking on and off. All right, so then we also have this section button, and let me go back to my banks. Let me turn the click off. Let's go to section. All right, so now for the section button, what this allows you to do with the section button on, you have the ability to use this with the arranger track. So you've got the arranger track up here. When section is activated and you're using the arrows, it's going to go through each of the arranger track sections. Almost as good as using the markers, which I'm going to show you here shortly. This is great to go through these sections of the arranger track. Now, it also has another fun feature that you can use it for, is if you select a channel in the mixer, if you turn the wheel, it will actually open up that channel's plugin area. Open up the inserts and sends and the Q mixes. So I can do that. I can go back to scroll. I can scroll. Whoops, not scroll. Where do I want to go? Channel. And I can go ahead and channel up to this track right here, one of the percussion tracks. Go back to section and open up the wheel, and there we go. We got that like that. So there are so many options that you have with all of the different buttons. And it's just a matter of sitting down, going through them, and trying what's good for your workflow. All right, so then the last one is, which is really one of my favorites, is the marker button. Now you have the ability, when the marker button is on, to scroll through your song. Now I want you to keep an eye on the marker track up here. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to quickly, and you see it snapping to the beats. And again, for those of us using grids, that's great. I don't know if there is a way to make it go to frames. I don't think there is yet. If there is, I will post a correction video to show how that works. But right now, it just snaps to the grid in your beats and your half beats. But here's the cool thing about the marker option. I'm going to go to a certain section of my song. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to push the button. Boom, I've got a marker. Push it again. Boom, I've got a marker. Boom, I've got a marker. So I can actually put in all of my markers with just this wheel. And to the beats, to the grid, I can place markers in the correct places, and I don't have to worry if I'm off or not on it. So now here's another thing that is really nice. I can hit shift, And when I hit shift, there's a button up here which you don't see. I'm going to be going through this a little bit later in the video. You have an undo button, and you can actually go back and undo that. And I'll show you that later in the next video. All right, so there is the point for using markers. And now, let's say you wanted to place markers manually on each of the sections of the arranger track. So now I can actually go to section. Let's see. Oops, I'm still in this here. Sorry. I can actually go to section and use the arrows, quickly change to marker, put a marker. Then go back to section and go to the next one, marker, put a marker. Section, marker. And I can do that for the whole thing and actually really get my parts lined up and everything. Now, usually, you put your markers down and then you can create arranger sections per each of the markers. But let's say you've done the arranger track first. This is a nice option to be able to just go to section, next one, marker, button, just like that. And you can really get a good fast rhythm here and not ever have to touch the mouse. It's a lot easier than trying to get the mouse into the right place and then hitting the button like that, because you kind of got to navigate. Now, if you're a good mouser, of course, all of this button stuff is useless to you. But, just so you know, that is really one way that you can get that done. Okay, so that has been the transport and the navigation section. There's still more to this here, but in the next video now I'm going to focus more on the entire area and show you how to work with the automation buttons and all of their shift options that are available to you. All right, I'll see you in the next video.